everyone. Welcome to Mexico Relocation Guides live Q&A. Today, we're going to be learning all about San Carlos Sonora. I have two very special guests today, Peggy and Steve, who live in San Carlos Sonora. Currently, they are traveling throughout Washington and then possibly parts of Canada, but usually they are in San Carlos Sonora, and they have quite the story to tell, quite the experience. Unlike a lot of many other guests that we have on the channel, they've actually been in Mexico for quite some years. So they have all kinds of really good insights to share with you guys. And they are a treasure trove of information. And, you know, if you guys know nothing about San Carlos Sonora, it is about 4 or 5 hours away from the U.S. border. So it's very popular with a lot of people who are looking at maybe moving from Phoenix, Arizona, Tucson, that area, and others, right? I mean, it's not only people from Arizona, but it's relatively close to the U.S. border. And so a lot of people really are looking at these cities that are closer to the U.S. border because maybe they think, hey, I would like to visit family, or maybe, you know, get back to an American hospital, or shopping, or, you know, those kinds of things, maybe some creature comforts that they would like to, you know, get back to from time to time. So welcome so much to the show, Peggy and Steve. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight.
Hi.
Thank you.
So that freeway that you're talking about, or that highway, is a modern 4-lane concrete highway that was built for the trucks going to Guaymas to the border. And so it's a very easy freeway to travel, real safe. And but like Mexico, the shoulders are only about that wide.
Yeah, and they're also used for driving.
That's true.
Yeah. How often do you guys make the drive back and forth?
We try to make the drive back and forth just once per season, which would be one time going south in the fall, returning to our house, and then one time returning north in the spring back to the U.S. But if we are in a position where we need to, or we want to return to the States, it's easy enough to make that drive within 5 to 6 hours back to the border.
Do you have any tips for people who might be thinking of moving to the area, as far as like maybe certain cars that do better in San Carlos versus some that do not?
High clearance.
Yeah.
The topos are big.
Yeah.
Corvettes, Porsches, sports cars.
No good.
No good down there.
Yeah. You're just going to scrape the bottom of your car.
Yeah. Pickups, Jeeps, Tahoes, things that have the higher clearance and that can handle rougher roads, because once you get off the main drag of San Carlos and you get into the neighborhoods, or if you go out into the desert area, it's a rougher ride and you're going to want a high clearance vehicle.
Yeah, they're unpaved roads. And then if they're not asphalt, they're cobblestone. And so it can be a rough ride at times.
Now, San Carlos is only about 20-30 minutes away from Guaymas. And that's another very kind of popular area that people are drawn to. What would you say are maybe some key differences between San Carlos and Guaymas?
Guaymas is an industrial town. There's a lot of manufacturing facilities in town and around it. They call them maquilas, and they're, a lot of U.S. manufacturers lease space in these places. And so they have products built there. And so it's a very blue collar worker town, where San Carlos is it's not a resort town, but it's a Mexican vacation town and a gringo Mexican town where they feel like they're really in Mexico, and instead of being in a tourist town like Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah. Or Cabo or Cancun or something like that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I've also read. It's just, San Carlos tends to be even prettier than Guaymas. And so people like living in San Carlos more. But maybe if somebody's budget doesn't afford them the San Carlos, real estate and housing, they might live in Guaymas and then just go to San Carlos to the beaches and the nightlife and the entertainment.
Yep. Yeah. Things are more affordable in Guaymas.
Yeah.
And stuff.
So how did you guys end up in San Carlos? Like, how long ago did you guys move? Where are you guys originally from, and why San Carlos?
Well, the adventure started with a sailboat cruise around the world. And that was back in 2015. And so we sailed our boat from Seattle, Washington, down the west coast of the United States, down the Baja Peninsula into Mexico. We cleared in Ensenada. We did not do the Baja Jaja. We sailed about a week behind them. And then we ended up in La Paz. And I was unfortunate enough to fall down the companionway and dislocated my shoulder. So the first major town we spent any time in was La Paz, and we were there for about 8-9 weeks while my shoulder recovered. And then we cruised down into the southern part, down to Puerto Vallarta, Barra Navidad, and Manzanillo, and then worked our way back. And our insurance requires us, because of the tropical or hurricane storms, they call them named storms, to be north of La Paz before, I think, June 1st. Right. And our boat draws 10 feet of water, and I didn't want to be hauled out on the hard, and there's only a couple places that could haul us anyway, but I wanted to remain in the water. And so our research led us to a marina called Marina San Carlos. And it had a deep water marina with a slip available that we would fit in. And so we decided that's where we were going to keep our boat for the summer. So we sailed from Loreto over to San Carlos. And that was an interesting story. There's a lot of tourist boats and cocktail boats in San Carlos, and there's a cove just as you pull into San Carlos, and I thought it'd be a real nice cove to anchor, and it was about 5:00 when we pulled in. Well, that's about the same time all the cocktail boats come back, and they anchor in this quiet little cove, and there was probably 30 boats in this cove with music blaring, people swimming, and a Mexican party going on.
Of course.
Yeah, so we just turned around and went into the Bahia and anchored out. But that's how we found San Carlos. And then we came back year after year from cruising. So the next summer, we came back at the end of the summer, got our boat ready to go, and then we headed south again. And on the third year, in the fall.
Yeah.
And then we repeated that one more time. And then during the third year we were down there cruising, we decided that we were not going to go to French Polynesia and then on to New Zealand, and that we needed to move our boat back to where the cruising was probably in the top 5 in the world. And that's the Pacific Northwest, which is Washington, Oregon, and British Columbia and Alaska. And there's a good anchorage every night. A lot of it's inland boating where you're not out on the ocean with the big ocean swells. And so we kind of were changing our plans, and Peggy had always been interested in real estate, and I'll let her talk about what happened after we made this decision.
Well, initially we looked at a beautiful penthouse condominium in Bucerias, just north of Puerto Vallarta, and we made a full price offer on it. Unfortunately, the owners backed out of the deal, and we had to look for something else. And when that deal fell through, all we really knew was we have to take the boat back to San Carlos, because we had already committed to having our sailboat shipped back to Canada in the summer. I think it would be July of 2018. In April of 2018, we went back to San Carlos, and I was driving past this house that we had admired and looked at for several years that had been on the market with a for sale sign. And over the years, I would make a phone call and I never heard back. So one day I drove by and there was a woman in the driveway, and I asked her, "Is this house really for sale?" And she says, "Yes." And she invited me in, and with hesitation, I went in, and I went back to the boat and told Steve, I got to go on that house that's on the market. And his focus was getting the boat ready and
getting the trailer ready to leave town and things like that. So I didn't have time to go look at the house.
Yeah.
So we ended up looking at the house and
the night before we left.
The day before we left. And then we were also focused. Steve's godson was getting ready to graduate from ASU with his master's. So we had a schedule. We needed to be back for that graduation. And then after the graduation, Steve eased back into considering the house. Well, we ended up buying the house in San Carlos.
Yeah.
And then we shipped the boat back to Washington.
But we had a whole nother, this was the beginning of the summer before we were going to ship the boat back. So we had 100 years. So we bought the house about a year earlier than we really needed to.
Mm-hmm.
So we were going to, that summer, we were going to drive to Alaska in our trailer. And so we're now back in the Northwest and we own this house. And I go, Peggy, we need to change our plans because we need to take the rose-colored glasses off and go see what we really bought in San Carlos.
Yeah.
So on the 4th of July, we turned around up in Seattle after saying hello to everybody and visiting our friends and drove straight back to San Carlos. And we got to experience our first summer in San Carlos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Summers in San Carlos are, let's say, hot and muggy.
Extra hot and muggy.
Yeah, because it is part of the Sonora Desert, and you talked about the different terrain and stuff. And even though we are in the Sonora Desert down there, we have mountains all around us, and they're rocky mountains that come right down to the water, and it's pretty spectacular scenery. And so we went back down there, and the gentleman was a really nice guy that owned it before. He had not kept it real clean. He didn't run the air conditioning in the rooms that he wasn't using. And the house was very damp. The red brick was wet on the inside from the humidity. There was bugs everywhere, the dirt everywhere. And so it was a good thing we went back down because we were going to rent it out long term the following winter, starting in September.
Mm-hmm.
And because we were still going to cruise for another year on our boat in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
But the price was right and you wanted to move forward with that house.
Yeah, it was kind of the bottom of the Mexican real estate market, for what gringos were buying and stuff. So we got a very good deal. And it's on the water on the Sea of Cortez. I could nowhere afford this kind of location in Washington, Oregon, California, British Columbia, any of those places.
Yeah, totally. Now, this was before I would say like the influx of foreigners that moved to Mexico in 2020 and 2021. So maybe the cost of real estate was also maybe half of what it would be today.
Yep, it was, or more.
Would it be fair to say that a house similar to that would go for upwards of $400,000 today?
No, that's what we paid for it originally. And now it's probably just over $1 million.
Because it is on the water. Yeah, I'm sorry. Like, it's not in the town. Like, it's seaside.
Yep, with a beach.
But we're not in a gated community. We're right in the downtown with, like we can walk to the two local grocery stores within 5 minutes.
And the Thrifty ice cream.
Oh, nice. That comes in handy when it's hot outside.
Yep.
So somebody's saying they're about $850,000 on the water right now. Yeah, and that's probably depending, obviously, on the size of home and the types of finishes it has, and whether it's furnished or not.
And whether you have a pool or.
Which you guys do.
Yep.
And our house is unique in the fact that we are beachfront. So, and a lot of there's homes that are waterfront, but they're high high bank or medium bank where it's difficult or impossible to get down to the water. But our house has direct, which is wonderful for my kayaking.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that is convenient. Now, there were some challenges when you initially bought the house that maybe you weren't, like, you just didn't really know a lot about the process. Like, did you guys start your residency visas before buying the house or
Yes.
after purchasing the home?
Before.
Okay.
We originally
So
did temporary residency because we were staying longer or wanted to stay longer than the 6 months. And so it was better for us to do temporary residency right away. And so we started the process the second year we were down there. And for anybody that starts the process up there and they don't explain it to you, they give you, actually seal it into your passport, a 7-day visa, which
it's 180.
Has 7 days. Just 7-day visa.
That might have changed because it's currently 180.
Okay. At that time, it was 7 days. And so when we crossed the border, I had a visa, right? So we didn't stop at kilometer 21, which is the immigration's office, and get our FMR. And so we started our process, and the immigration agent in Guaymas said, well, where's your FMR? And I opened my passport and I said, well, right here. She says, no, the FMR, you got it. That's not it. So we had to drive. She couldn't issue us one. We had to drive all the way back to kilometer 21, which is only 21 kilometers south of the border, and get our FMR. So for anybody that's doing that, make sure you get your FMR when you, even though you have a visa in your passport.
Yeah. That might have changed too since then. It's now an FMM, but
okay.
Yeah, but yes, and you're absolutely right, Steve. A lot of people miss that step, and it's a shame. You guys were luckily not too far from the border, but we know people who are in Mexico City, Guadalajara, Cancun, or Merida.
And they have to go all the way back to their point of entry.
All the way back. In some cases, some professionals can help you. It just depends on each person's case and how many people they know at INM and whether they can, use a bit of their influence in those offices. But if somebody's trying to do it on their own,
which we were doing,
yeah,
it's the temporary we did on our own, and it took forever, and getting the passport photos, and it was back and forth a lot of. So when we did our Permanente, we knew a little bit more about Mexico, and we found an agent that did the process for our Permanente.
Well, and that ended up being incredibly helpful because when we first started the process, we were on our boat and we used the marina address because that would have been considered our address. Mm-hmm. But then when we were transitioning from temporal to Permanente, we had bought the house. Well, of course, it was never explained to us if you change your address or buy a house that you have to notify the immigration office
of your new address.
Of the new address. Well, fortunately, Miguel, our agent, was able to deter or reduce the fine that we had to pay.
The penalty.
The penalty significantly. So that was helpful. But in addition to helping us with our Permanente residency, he also assisted me in acquiring my Sonora, Mexico driver's license, which I'm sure I could have figured it out, but it was really nice to have him step me through the process.
Yeah, and it probably wasn't too expensive. I mean, how much did you pay him for let's just say the driver's license portion of it?
It was just a flat rate for everything. And I think it was, back then, I think it was between $200 and $300.
Yeah. For something so important as securing your permanent residency, which allows you to live in Mexico indefinitely, and saving you the hassle of, like you mentioned, Steve, having to go back and forth and now we need this document, and then you having to get that document, and then going back to the office and, by the way, now we need your, passport pictures. This is a certain size. And the facilitators just kind of help you figure all that out. So you show up with all the correct documentation.
Yeah.
Well, in addition to that, the level of security, because you do have to provide a significant amount of financial information and personal identification information. And so you want that in the hands of somebody that's trustworthy. And we're glad that we went that route.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people might be interested on knowing, like, and they might not know this because a lot of people watch this channel from the United States or Canada, but a lot of people might not know that you actually need what is called a fideicomiso when you are purchasing land within a certain restricted zone. So can you tell people about that process for you guys?
It was handled by our real estate agent, but within, I think it's 50 miles of the coastal water, include the lakes. Mm-hmm. So Lake Chapala is an area that's included in this, that non-residents of Mexico cannot own property in Mexico. That you need to have a trust own that property, and then the foreigner or the gringo can then own the trust. And that trust is administered by a bank, and you pay them a yearly fee for that. And that's and it's a hefty document, and that's put together by a notario and the lawyer as part of the transaction for buying your house. And then if you're on the water, you also have to have a federal zone permit, because you have to have a permit for that access to the beach from your property. And so that's all kind of handled by your real estate agent, if you have a good real estate agent, when you're kind of closing up your house. But ours took almost 3 years to get our trust, because
3 years.
Yeah, the previous owner, an unscrupulous property manager in San Carlos, he was giving her the money to pay the trust. Well, she changed it to her name.
Oh yeah, you mentioned this in our initial call.
Yeah,
how crazy is that?
Yeah, but that still goes on today. So people, make sure your trust is in your name every year, even though if you're not making the payments yourself through the property manager, because it still goes on in San Carlos today. I don't know about other parts of Mexico, but there's a big brouhaha about that going on right now.
So knowing that now, would you still purchase a house in Mexico? Like, if kind of now that you know all that you know, would you still move forward with buying a house?
Speaking for myself, yes. However, we bought our house in 2018. And since 2018, the real estate prices have skyrocketed. So realistically, for Steve and I, we would not be in a position to be able to rebuy our house at today's prices right now. Fortunately, before we stepped forward with buying the house in San Carlos, when we attempted to buy the condominium in Bucerias, our realtor in Bucerias educated us about the trust and the fidici.
I know it's a word, fideicomiso.
Yeah, so she educated us about that. So when we went through the process with the house in San Carlos, we were much more prepared and better informed, which helped us in our negotiation. But yes, there's wonderful opportunities in being in Mexico. Of course, you have, the price differences and the cost of living, but the quality of living really has been very rewarding.
Looks like we have a bit of a lag. Just hang tight, everybody. They'll come back on.
Timer's still going off. Steve's still, he was very active in playing pickleball, and we have a great group of friends, and it's a great atmosphere. I can just toss the kayak in the beach in front of the house and go kayaking till my heart is content. So I speaking for myself, I would maybe a few things different.
So at today's prices, I couldn't afford to buy waterfront
Exactly.
in Mexico, San Carlos probably. And so the only reason we came to stayed in San Carlos is because we could afford nice waterfront home in San Carlos. And if we couldn't do that today, but having said that, the people that I've met while in San Carlos, I would say are now closer friends than any friends I have up in the Northwest. And I think there's a couple of the people are very unique. And one of the traits is that through all of them is they're brave, right? I mean, everybody's family, friends, and everybody just grills us all about, oh, are the cartels going to kidnap you? Oh, you're going to get, killed by the cartels. Oh, you're going to get, the banditos on the highway are going to take your money and all that kind of stuff. And we've traveled extensively through Mexico and up to Guadalajara and out to the Butterfly Preserve and, through cartel controlled country and Mohican and we have had no issues at all in our time that we've traveled. And so the people have to be brave. And the other thing in San Carlos, it's not easy to get to, and it's a little bit more expensive than going to Cabo or Puerto Vallarta. I mean, it's probably like 4 or 5 times more expensive than those places. And so it's a little difficult to get to because a lot of people don't want to drive, 7-8 hours to get there and stuff. So they got to have some, initiative and some drive to get there. And they're very unique. I mean, there's retired military officers. There's people that have invented stuff. We've had race car drivers. We've had, reality TV show, Wild Bill from Delis catches down there and, all kinds of personalities and not even just famous people, but individuals that you wouldn't know anything, guys my age in their 70s that were pioneers in the tech industry. They kind of created this or did that and had their companies, and they've chosen San Carlos as a place to live. And so it's the people down there for me are just phenomenal. And I've made some really good friends with these guys and different people. And she speaks very fluent Spanish. And so she's made some good friends with some of the nationals too.
Yeah. Which is great. So awesome, Peggy.
Yeah, I think Steve's giving me more credit than I deserve. I wouldn't say I'm fluent. I would say I'm mid to upper elementary level.
But you started with 0.
But I continue to practice, and I have an online tutor that I actually found in 2018 while we were in our house in the summer in San Carlos. And even though she moved out of Guaymas, she and I continue to have weekly online Spanish sessions. And, and in addition to learning Spanish, I can go to her and ask her a cultural question and make sure that I understand the aguinaldos and, just different cultural things to make sure that I'm doing things respectfully and properly.
Of course,
It's invaluable.
Yeah, good for you.
And the people she interacts with, or just like at the grocery store, because she always asks them their name in Spanish, and they talk, and I mean, the people just love it that she's conversing with them in Spanish.
Yeah. And I think that you will find that that's the case in most of Mexico. Mexicans are very proud when people try to learn Spanish, foreigners especially, right? Or foreigners, right? In general, but yeah, you will notice that they will really try to understand what it is that you're saying, as opposed to maybe making a face or trying to switch immediately to English because it's frustrating for them or whatever. So good for you, Peggy. That's really. I hope that you will continue going to your Spanish tutoring classes.
I have a session tomorrow, so I even have my homework done, which doesn't happen every week. But no, I'm going to continue. And I explained to my tutor that it was very important to me to start focusing on proper sentence structure. So because I have a lot of vocabulary, but now it's time to actually speak a proper sentence so I don't sound like I'm a little kid.
Yeah.
I get about 3 to 6 words a year.
Yeah. Peggy is your translator, your unofficial translator for everything. Yeah.
And that's, speaking of San Carlos, I find that that's one thing that's very interesting is there's a big group of gringos that will, whether they're looking for a carpenter or a contractor or whatever, the conversation will come up, well, do they speak English? And of course that will always help. And if it helps me, if I can talk in both Spanish and English, but I think it's really important that we're in a foreign country, and if we want to have the best quality of life, then it's up to us to put forth the effort and speak the language and understand the culture.
Yeah, and it will open more doors. It will. You'll get access
absolutely.
to a whole other like community, right? That you might have been more closed off to because you weren't able to communicate. Even at an elementary level, like, that even opens doors.
Yes.
Yeah. Speaking of the like kind of, foreigner and gringo community, what is that like? Like how, I've read different things and I've heard different things. I hear there's like, it fluctuates also depending on if there's an event in town or if there's like high season, low season. But I hear that, it's a good mix of locals and expats. How do you feel about that you actually live there and what you see in town?
And it varies from the time of year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So during the winter time, the population almost doubles with the gringos coming in or the snowbirds coming down and coming into their houses.
Just stick with us, guys. Sometimes this happens on live streams. It's totally normal. If you want to go ahead and start posting your questions, I'll start putting them up for Peggy and Steve. There you are.
Yeah, so the Mexicans in the summertime come in because they own vacation property. Now the Mexicans can borrow money to buy a house. And so their vacation properties are there, or they move their families there for the summer, and then the husband will commute from where he's working to San Carlos. And so the Mexican population increases quite a bit in the summertime. And there's a couple places where they kind of cross over, and that's in the sports fishing area and in pickleball.
Yes.
Very cool.
Yeah, San Carlos had built a 14-court pickleball facility a couple of years ago. We sponsor a couple of girls that are on the professional tour that are Mexicans. We have an outreach to what's that little community?
With La Manga.
La Manga, to their kids. They've built them a pickleball court and teaching them how to play pickleball. And the Mexicans that I've met are all pickleball players.
Yeah.
And
it's a growing sport.
Probably the biggest. And then also the softball. I don't play softball, but the guy that did a wrap on my trailer that I needed, he knows all the guys I know that play softball. So it's, the Mexicans also play softball. They really like baseball, and so those activities is where the cultures kind of mingle more than any place else. Socially, we belong to the San Carlos Yacht Club, and we have a few Mexican members, but not a lot. We're kind of trying to change that, but that's mainly kind of a gringo, club, and where the pickleball is probably
a good mix. A good mix. Just in case anybody's wondering, there's about 7,000 people that live in San Carlos full time. And the fluctuations in foreigners are, what I've read is anywhere between 2,000-3,000 people living there long term.
Well, and Steve has some stats here. You can read your.
Yeah. So this was talking to one of actually our real estate agent that represented us on our house. San Carlos, she said, has a population right now of about 12,000 people at its peak during the wintertime. And she said that it's about 50-50 Mexicans versus snowbirds. So about 6,000, the population increases by about 6,000 from the snowbird.
Mm-hmm.
And then on a...
So it increases from 12,000 to almost 20,000?
No, 6,000 to 12.
Oh, okay. Got it.
But during the holidays, it gets up to like 20,000 people in town.
Especially Semana Santa.
It is crazy.
Whoa. So it's packed.
It's packed. They close off. You can't turn left across the boulevard anywhere along because we have a main boulevard and then we have laterals that you got to turn to get back the other way. That's all closed. You got to go all the way to the end of town or out of town to turn around to come back the other way. And on our website, SV Flyer, I posted a video that I took that night of the cars, drone video, backed up going both in and out of town through downtown, and it's just bumper to bumper lights.
Yeah, the city wasn't built for that kind of traffic and that amount of people and that many cars. And
Yep. It's quite the people watching event.
Yeah, I bet. And so there's this fluctuation in the population. We were talking about earlier, like just general cost of living. Mm-hmm. Now, because it is, I think not too far from the U.S. border, would you say, did you do any comparison on like cost of living in Bucerias versus living in San Carlos when you guys were thinking about living in Bucerias or not really?
So when we first moved there, San Carlos was probably less than Bucerias, but because the gringos really don't know what things cost down there and what to pay labor and what to pay for things, that they've increased to Bucerias or maybe even higher because San Carlos has just exploded, and construction is one of the things that we were going to build a bodega on our property, and I got the bids for it a couple of years ago, and I just said, no way. It was almost like U.S. prices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's because there's so much construction going on there that materials have gone up significantly and the labor's gone up significantly.
Demand is way up.
Yeah. Food compared to Puerto Vallarta, Bucerias, is probably a little bit less. The food in San Carlos compared to Guaymas is more expensive. And then Hermosillo and let's say Santa Ana is significantly less than even Guaymas. And so,
really?
Yeah.
More options, bigger city. Yeah.
And more gringos. Because again, the gringos will pay the higher prices because they're comparing them to U.S. prices. And where the Mexicans, like in Santa Ana, which is predominantly Mexican, they're not going to pay what a gringo would pay for an avocado, It's
yeah. Or to go out to dinner for two or those kinds of things.
And that's really gone out of, when we first came down there, the two of us could probably for less than 400 pesos go to a medium restaurant, bar food type stuff and be out of there for less than 400 pesos. Yeah. And now we're lucky to get out of there for less than 500 or 600 pesos.
Oh, yeah.
The bar food. Yeah. Barracuda. Yeah. And then I think a typical, not the higher upper end, but probably between 500 to 1,000 pesos for two people to go out with maybe one glass of wine and stuff like that. So,
yeah. Which for anybody watching at home and trying to do that calculation in their head, it's like about 20, for 500 to 1,000 pesos would be 25 to 50 US dollars.
Yeah.
Depending on the exchange rate, but yeah.
Yeah. At 20 to 1, that's good.
Yeah.
Good number.
Yeah. Yeah, and I could see why people, and that is a really good point that you bring up, Steve, about people not knowing what things cost, and inadvertently, especially in a small town like San Carlos, you can really increase the cost of living for everybody without you trying to like do it right.
Right.
You just don't know any better. So it's really important that you educate yourself, because it's not the same for a Mexican to pay for things with a Mexican wage,
Right.
where the Mexican, and I'm not even talking about like the poverty level Mexican, I'm talking about like a professional who went to school and has a family. Like the average family brings in about 20 to 25,000 pesos a month.
Right.
And that's about 1,000 to about $1,200 a month. So it's not a lot. And I know that a lot of people might think like, well, like that might not be the norm, but it is actually a lot of the norm for a professional. Now, if you're a carpenter and you're like maybe working, manual labor, it's a lot less that you're earning on a monthly
Except in
basis.
San Carlos.
Yeah, maybe except in San Carlos, where they're charging the premium prices to build.
Yeah. Well, and then also the waiters and waitresses in the restaurant in San Carlos, because the gringos are used to tipping 15 to 20%, right?
Mm.
And
that becomes a norm.
Yep.
For everyone. And in Mexico, the norm is 10% to 15% if it's a really nice restaurant. Yeah.
Yeah. Then the gringos don't know that. And so they just, and then the expectations are there, and it's tough. What are you paying for housekeeping?
Yeah. Right.
What do you pay for the housekeeper?
Well, she has some exceptions to her, but it's expensive. It's 900 pesos per week, but then one day a week. And then when we're gone in the summer, I ask her to come once every 6 weeks. But while she's there, she does do a lot, and she's very focused on doing some things that I want done very specifically. But it's expensive, and but she does a good job, and she's trustworthy, and I like her personally, and so it works. But I feel that I'm getting the value. But
for example, we had a guy that we got to know real well. There was a Mexican that did kind of the washing and waxing and detailing of our boat in Mexico, and we would pay him. His name was Jump Ship Jimmy, but we would pay him $50 a day to work for us.
Okay.
Now he's getting $300 a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
US dollars. Just got a promotion.
US dollars, because that's what these guys will pay to get him, because he was the best guy down there and did a really good job, and got a lot of work done in his day. That the other boaters kept offering more money to come work on their boat, so that's where his rates got up to. Now, if there's a downturn in the economy, that's going to disappear for him, and hopefully it's not too much of a hardship. But
well, he's saving. Yeah.
Mexico.
Yeah, you're right. It's not in our culture to save that much money, which is another really good point. So, when we initially talked, you talked about something that I think is a kind of culture shock for a lot of Americans moving to Mexico, Canadians too, and that's just the speed of things, the culture of mañana, and the culture of like,
not today.
Yeah, not today.
Yeah, now that's very hard. And timeliness of showing up when they say they're going to show up at 10 o'clock, and it's noon and you haven't heard from them or seen them and stuff. That's been hard for me to adjust to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just have to embrace it. Or how do you deal with it then?
Get frustrated, and you kind of put up with it, but then you find a carpenter or a cabinet maker that shows up early and gets it done on time and stuff, and you sing his praise, and hopefully he doesn't get too busy and forgets about you.
Yeah. Then that becomes like one of the people that you hire on repeat.
Yes.
Yeah. Kind of like your house cleaner. By the way, Peggy, when you were mentioning like the cost and saying that, you know, it's expensive. Yes, it's expensive, I think, for like the typical Mexican household. But I think it depends on like how much is she doing for your household? Like, you know, just comparing, and I know that, you know, I'm kind of stepping on my own foot here for saying like, hey, you guys, whenever you move to Mexico, should really do your research, because you might end up overpaying and then raising the cost of living. But comparing house cleaning services to maybe somewhere like the United States, where, you know, they're not going to do your laundry. They might be in and out in an hour. I don't know how much time she's spending at your house. She's always reliable. Like, I mean, she always comes when she says she's going to come. And those kinds of things have a lot of value for the people that you're hiring.
Well, and regarding our housekeeper, she's typically at our house at least 6 hours, if not up to 7.5 hours.
Yeah, she's doing a deep cleaning every time.
And she does a really good job. And I try to be cautious, you know, and you know, cognizant about what I'm asking her to do. But you know, if I need extra things done, like the refrigerator cleaned, I'll make sure that all of the miscellaneous things are out before then. You know, because to me, it's teamwork. There's certain things that I would just prefer that she do, but you know, there's things that I don't mind doing, and I want to be respectful of her time.
Totally. Well, the audience has some questions.
Great.
Do you guys want to take some questions from the
Sure.
audience?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. While I'm reading through some of these to see like which ones might be best to pull up right now, would you guys mind talking about the infrastructure? Like, what kind of medical options are there in town?
We have a few family practice physicians. For those that are interested, no, they don't take insurance or Medicare, so it's going to be cash pay. Just recently, the San Jose hospital system has built a new hospital just outside of San Carlos, and it's a nice building. There's going through some growing pains, but that is an option. And then, of course, an hour and 20 minutes north of San Carlos is Hermosillo. And a lot of people go to the private hospital, the SEMA hospital up there. So we do have medical options. And then, of course, there are people that travel back to the United States, you know, people that have Medicare, and it makes sense to utilize Medicare. Also, retired veterans that have TRICARE, that's another option for them. So it depends on how far people want to commute and what the circumstances are.
And for insurance, I'm on Medicare, so I use just a regular off-the-shelf travel policy. So I have coverage when I'm in Mexico. And Peggy has an expat insurance policy that has a high deductible and is kind of for emergency or, you know, no pre-existing conditions or no OB or any of those kind of.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a catastrophic kind of plan, Peggy?
Yes. And my coverage covers me in the United States and internationally, but it's only for, you know, catastrophic conditions.
Is it one of these like is it the one that Greg Hovey recommended to you?
This is with IMG.
Okay.
And IMG offers a lot of coverage in Europe, in Asia, in Canada. And that's, thank goodness I haven't had to use it, but I know that I have it in my back pocket if I need it.
Yeah, most things, if you did need to go to the doctor, if they were outpatient and not emergency like scenarios, you would pay out of pocket.
Exactly. And I have done that. I have had some diagnostics just recently, and I just paid for it out of pocket, and then I have the assurance knowing that it's done, because for me to have certain diagnostics in the United States just isn't fiscally practical unless there was an urgency.
Yeah.
And when I dislocated my shoulder the first year we were here, we went to the emergency room and they had to sedate me. And what was the bill?
$1,200 US.
$1,200 US, where that would have been minimum $12,000 US.
Yeah.
In the United States. So it's even when you have to pay out of pocket, it's pretty affordable.
Right.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Steve. Dislocating your shoulder sounds very painful.
It was most painful thing that ever happened to me.
I bet. I'm sorry. Oh, are you better now?
Oh yeah, no lingering effects from it.
That's good. That's good. You're a strong man then. Polly, thanks for being here. She's wondering if San Carlos is good for a single lady. She works remotely.
Hi, Polly. Absolutely. San Carlos and Guaymas too has a lot of single women, retired, semi-retired, that have a very nice life and a wonderful circle of friends, and they're very actively involved. There's a lot of charities and activities. I've never heard of a single woman having any kind of problems in San Carlos. It's been very welcoming.
And the guys, there's a lot of single guys down there too that are either widowed or separated, and they play pickleball. I play pickleball with a lot of them, and I don't think you'd have any problem as a single person in San Carlos.
Yeah,
but
if you're looking to find love again.
Yeah, the secret is to get involved in something going on. There's a lot of charities down there that are supported by the gringos. I mean, we got Castaway Kids. The Rotary does a lot of stuff, and then there's pickleball. There's, even though we don't have a really good golf course, there's women's golf club. There's a men's golf club, and there's some tennis, and there's softball. There's the yacht club. There's a lot of activities down there for single people.
Yeah. Beach cleanups.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. That's a big, it's not just beach cleanup, it's city cleanup. They go around and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't necessarily need to.
I'm sorry.
Photography club.
Yeah. Photography, computer.
Hiking.
Yeah.
Disc golf. There's all kinds of activities to get involved in.
And then there's a group of people that will just rally together and they'll organize going off on a travel excursion somewhere else in Mexico together. And it's really nice.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. So Polly, I mean, as long as you put yourself out there, you can find your tribe.
Yep.
She's also wondering, what would a small rental go for? And I think it really just depends on what part of town you're going to be renting in.
Well,
so Steve was kind enough to get some numbers from his realtor.
Looking at his notes.
So $800 to $2,000 a month, U.S. dollars.
Yeah.
And real estate's all usually quoted in U.S. dollars.
Yeah.
And
have you found that is most common in Sonora?
Pardon me?
Have you found that quoting things in U.S. dollars is common in all of Sonora or in San Carlos only?
In San Carlos.
Okay. I was wondering.
People with the conversion.
But in Puerto Vallarta area, real estate was also in U.S. dollars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's these cities that are very popular with foreigners, right? Yeah. Especially from the United States. I see everything quoted in U.S. dollars. I think it's so strange.
But in San Carlos, the only one store is this one gift shop, and they use it to their advantage. They quote it in U.S. dollars, but then they convert it at their exchange rate to pesos to put through the credit card system.
Oh, yeah.
So they're playing because they're not using the real exchange rate and
totally.
Stuff. Yeah, where in the real estate it's the day of your closing that they calculate the exchange rate to U.S. dollars.
Yeah. Good tip. And if for anybody wondering, in all of Mexico, whenever you withdraw money from any ATM, it'll automatically ask you if you want to accept that bank's conversion rate. You should always decline that because your bank back at home will give you a much better conversion rate in 99% of the cases. Yeah. So decline that because it could be a savings depending on how much you're withdrawing, but it could be a huge savings.
Exactly.
And the other thing on on using the ATM machines is if you use a Charles Schwab debit card or check with your debit card company and whether they'll pay all your ATM fees in a foreign country.
Yeah.
Because that'll save you a lot of money too.
Yeah. Anyone that waives any international fees. They were wondering, so Kevin, thanks for being here. He's wondering, have you spent any time in Hermosillo? He's thinking about flying into Hermosillo and then getting some transport to San Carlos.
Yes. Well, we've spent time in Hermosillo. We drive up there. That's where the Costco is. And that's where the airport is. That's where the SEMA hospital is. We've gone up there with our yacht club group to go up to see the
baseball game,
the Naranjas, the baseball game, which was really cool.
Nice.
And I've driven up to Hermosillo many times by myself and taken care of business, gone and ran errands, went to Costco.
Went to the consulate.
Yeah, I had to go to the consulate to get my passport renewed. And that was a seamless experience. That was wonderful. And I never have had any problems. I see he's asking about flying into Hermosillo and getting transportation to San Carlos. Absolutely. That is definitely in the option. There are several drivers that we know personally that we've used, had them drive either ourselves or guests back up to the airport. So transportation between Hermosillo and San Carlos is very accessible and easy.
There's also the bus,
That's true.
Tesla.
Tufesa.
Yeah.
Tufesa, this one?
The Tufesa bus.
Which will go from Hermosillo to Guaymas, and then you have to take a taxi over to San Carlos.
You have to walk far away from the airport to take this bus?
I think that bus takes people right to the airport. You rode that bus one time and it took you right to the airport. It's my understanding that Tufesa has, on certain days, they have a shuttle that will drive over to San Carlos. I don't know a lot about it, but I'm sure that can be researched.
Yeah.
And if you go to WhatsApp San Carlos, which is kind of the forum for San Carlos, and post, hey, I need a ride from the airport to San Carlos, that the people on there will post the names of the drivers, that they can contact and set up. That'll pick them up at the airport and drive them straight to San Carlos. Remember what that was
Well, that's also a great place to learn about charities and other expat groups and things like that, right?
And also all the weekly activities. And because honestly, in San Carlos, even though it's a small town, if you want to be busy every day of the week, you can be.
Yeah. The restaurants advertise who's playing at their restaurants, and what are the specials, and all the clubs kind of have a posting that they put, and there's a fishing report in it, and it's a good central place for information. And then Facebook has a What's Up San Carlos group on there too.
Yeah. So what are some cons or negatives of living in San Carlos? Because I know people are always wondering, like, okay, it sounds like a really, really neat town and, kind of like a very close-knit community, lots of activities. What are some negatives?
Your friends and family won't come visit you.
It's their loss.
Been your personal negative?
It's their loss, because they really are. They're missing out.
Yeah.
It's either
is that because of the sorry
it's too expensive, too inconvenient, or their number one is it's too dangerous.
Yeah.
They just have these false perceptions from what they're hearing in the media, and the reality is these are a group of people that do not understand the foundation of the Mexican culture. And it's too bad because they're missing out. But I would say, and this is just a minor drawback, and there are easy enough ways to get around it. But, we drive our RV and our truck and trailer back and forth. And so I just make sure that I'm prepared if I want certain spices, certain foods, just certain cosmetics, certain products that I know that are not available in Mexico. I bring them down. there are certain products like for women that want a very specific, say, skincare or hair care product. If you didn't bring it down, you can go up to Hermosillo to the mall to Liverpool, and usually you can get higher end skincare and hair care products there. So there's always ways to work around it. And again, being so close to the U.S. border, if there's really something you need, we needed a dishwasher, and we just drove back up to the States and picked it up and came back with a dishwasher. Problem solved.
There you go. Yeah. You just need to have a car to be able to haul all these things back.
And in San Carlos, the infrastructure is a little neglected for the growth that they've had.
Yeah.
There's not how would I say it? It's the water is a delivery issue, not a supply issue. There's plenty of water from the wells that are in Obregon and kind of Guaymas in those areas to supply the city, but they've had such huge growth with very little growth management and supervision by the inspections for the building department and stuff. And so I call it an interruptible water supply. And then almost 100% of the homes in the surrounding area have what they call tanakas, which are cisterns or they're storage for water. And the houses have either they're on the roof and they're gravity fed, or they have a pump system and they pump it through the house. And then the sewers. And on a number of times we've had sewage on the streets because the sewer's backed up. And
because there's not a cleanup constantly of the sewer system and those kinds of things.
No, when that happens, you just ignore it. So we take out our own can of Clorox water and spray it all down after it's all dried up, and hope that none of the bacteria make it into the house. But we haven't had any problems with that. And on our house, we have a water softener system, and then for the ice machine and for drinking water, we have a under counter low pressure RO system, which gives us very good quality drinking water. And before that, we just bought bottled water from the local bottling company that does the low pressure RO.
Yeah. Do you think it would be possible to live in San Carlos without a car?
No.
Well, we know a few people that have done it.
Yeah, but either with a bicycle or an electric bike, you could do it.
With an electric bike, yeah. And the bus goes through, but it's a lot more practical to have a car because, like the buses, if you live on the outskirts of San Carlos, in say for instance the part of the Ranchitos, the buses commute out to a certain extent, but it would be very challenging.
And the buses stop after 10 o'clock. All the restaurants and clubs,
I forgot about
they transport the employees home after their shifts. That's part of their benefit package to get them to be able to come over and work in San Carlos.
Yeah. But there's limited bus service, and it's probably always not on time. And so it's not the most convenient way to getting around. Really having your own vehicle would be most convenient.
Yeah.
Yes.
Especially in the peak of summer, I'm sure, and leading up to the hottest time of year.
Oh, good Lord, yes, that would be.
Yeah, riding a bike wouldn't. You'd have to be an Iron Man.
Yeah.
To ride a bike in San Carlos during the summer.
But taxis readily available, or kind of also hit or miss?
Actually, in the last 2 years, taxis have made an appearance, and there's a company that does the tricycle, the motorized tricycle.
Tuk-tuk.
What do they call them?
Tuk-tuk. It's like a moped.
Like a rickshaw?
Kind of a rickshaw where they can passengers plus the driver.
Yeah, because there's more and more tourists. We're starting to see all the charter boats may make more money off cocktail cruises than sport fishing.
Yeah. Drunk people like to spend money.
And then you're seeing the jet skis around and the towing the people behind them. And we don't have the parachute thing yet, but we do have skydiving.
Yeah.
Oh, what else is really fun for those that are into? Is it called kiteboarding or kite
Yeah, there's
surfing?
a kiteboard club.
Yeah, out at the Algodones Beach, out by Sagi Peso, and now there's several other new restaurants, and it's really cool out there.
Yeah, that sounds fun. That
Yeah.
sounds really fun on the open ocean, and yeah, how cool.
Yep, I want to learn.
Yeah, me too. I'll go with you.
One day.
Perfect.
We'll just fall together, Steve, over and over and over again until we get it
Yeah,
down.
but I'm 71 years old. I don't want to
Well,
fall.
I have the skeleton of basically a 70-year-old. Every time I work out and whatever, it takes me like 4 days to recover. So, I get sore easily. Well, I can't thank you guys enough for joining us tonight. And any closing words, any words of advice for anybody thinking of moving to either San Carlos or moving to Mexico in general?
As a whole, in Mexico, I think anybody that's interested in Mexico, no matter where it is, that they should give it a try. And, whether it's an extended vacation or some kind of a sabbatical, I think they should do it. I mean, there's many communities that we traveled to, like when Steve mentioned when we were on our way to the butterfly preserve, communities I would love to return to that were very satisfying, and the people were incredibly welcoming. And it's really opened up our eyes and our attitude just about life as a whole. And it's been very fulfilling for us.
Yeah, and the people, and like I said before, the people, both the gringos and the Mexicans, the Mexicans love people. They love, to get together. They're very family orientated, and it's kind of neat to see. And the other thing that I think is really exciting is that there's an emerging middle class and upper middle class in Mexico. And those people are entrepreneurs. I mean, they want a better life.
Yep.
And they want the things that they see on their smartphones, and they want to be successful, and that their kids are going to college and getting engineering degrees, whether in agricultural engineering or electrical engineering. And they're just, they want a better life. But their balance with family is different than it is in the United States. And so not quite the work is hard or as long as hours and dedicated to the job, but they want what they're seeing on the internet, and it's coming. And I think it's pretty spectacular and exciting to see the number of entrepreneurs that the economy in Mexico, because Mexico has almost a dual economy. They've got the tax base transaction that's documented economy, and then there's the cash economy. And that cash economy is huge.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
So if you guys are wondering, by the way, just kind of parentheses to this show, Peggy, sorry, I don't know where I came up with Debbie, but Peggy is doing digital marketing for companies. And so why don't you speak a little bit about that? Because I would love to tell people what you're doing just to plug in another business and empower another woman who's also running a business, how you can help businesses.
How I can help businesses is I got bored and went back to school to get a digital marketing degree. I already have a degree in healthcare management and life sciences. I also have a degree in echocardiography and a degree in television and video production. But digital marketing is what's happening right now, and it's going to continue to trend along with AI and social media. And I'm developing a client base out of San Carlos. My most recent client is a skincare line, and I'm expanding my client base, hopefully including the healthcare and medical marketing industry. And anybody that has any questions or may need some support, either stateside or within Mexico, because I do have permanent residency and I'm able to work and pay taxes in Mexico, I'd be happy to support you.
Awesome.
Thanks, Mariana.
Yeah. I wish you the best of luck. I hope you get, obviously more and more clients. You start, helping some I know a lot of businesses in Mexico definitely need your services. And
Yes.
Mexico is maybe like 10, 15 years behind the United States as far as like the adoption of these digital marketing services. But if you can show them how they can, be in front of more eyeballs and help get their name out there, it's obviously a no-brainer for a lot of companies. So yeah, if any of you guys know any businesses in Mexico, San Carlos, the United States, who would need a digital marketer to help them promote their business, or you yourself are watching this and maybe you have a product that you would like Peggy to take a look at and see how she might be able to help you promote it, reach out to her. How can they reach out to you?
The best way to reach out to me is through LinkedIn.
Okay.
I find that portal to work very well and very effectively for me. I have to admit that I've been behind my own 8 ball in getting my website up and live, but it is in the works.
Okay. When we're done with this, maybe you can share that link with me and I'll share it
Absolutely.
in the
Thank
description
you.
of this video.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you all again for joining us tonight. And you guys at home too. Thank you guys for joining us. I hope you learned a little bit about San Carlos. I think it's an area that I personally am now very interested in covering more and doing videos in and sharing it with the rest of you. But I hope this at least gave you a little glimpse into what it's like. It has a really nice community. I know people who live in the area and love it. And I know, I know it's not for everybody. The hot weather can also be very oppressing for a lot of people. But there's air conditioning, you guys. Like there's air conditioning the same way there is in the hot areas of the United States. So, don't be terrified about that.
Or you do what we do and just fly north for the summer.
Yeah, exactly.
Have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, just snowbird it.
Absolutely. Exactly. Well, thanks again, Mariana. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you guys both. And I hope to do this again sometime soon.
Wonderful.
All right. Well, you guys take care. Everybody at home, take care. And stay tuned for our next live stream coming soon. Next week on, I want to say on, let me pull up my calendar real quick. Next week on Thursday, I'm going to be covering the future of Mexican residency visas in 2025. So kind of a big topic, but I know one that a lot of you guys are interested in. So join me next week if you're interested in that. If you don't know how to get notifications about that, you can join my free newsletter. You can go to mexicorelocationguide.com/newsletter. I will put it in the comments for anybody who's interested in joining that live stream next week. So thank you guys so much and have a good evening.
Hasta luego.
Bye.